This is Museum Backstage, where we pull the curtain wide open on the hidden world of museums, galleries, and cultural spaces. If you think museums are only about quiet halls and priceless objects, think again. Behind the scenes is a world of high-stakes decisions, creative problem-solving, and people who keep culture alive against the odds. You will hear bold voices, untold stories, and fresh perspectives that challenge how we see preservation, power, and the future of collections. Here is your host, Samantha Hunt-Duran.
Hello, and welcome to Museum Backstage. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally it's me asking the questions of our guests, but we're going to flip it around. And today my producer, Nick, is going to be asking me some questions. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Sam. Always happy to be on somebody else's show, but play the host. So this is another one of those days. So we are here to learn about your new podcast. So let's start by telling us what is your podcast called and what it's about.
Yeah, thanks. So, my podcast is called Museum Backstage, and my guests and I have conversations spotlighting the unseen work of museums. So, it's all about giving listeners a behind the scenes pass to the museum and culture world, kind of the parts that the public doesn't normally see. I mean, who doesn't want insider access to a mysterious industry, right?
hmm Well, this is so true because I never thought that there was such a line of work existed until I met you. Because we all go to museums and we all, are interested in big history, buff. So I'm always looking at stuff from, hundreds, thousands of years ago. But there is a lot of work that goes into putting those things together, of course. But this podcast is going to get into it, and the name, obviously, give me the name again. It's a great name.
Museum Backstage.
Exactly. So tell us about your audience. Who is going to benefit from tuning in to becoming a subscriber or a follower for your show?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to structure this show so that you don't have to be an industry insider to get some benefit from it. We really think that no matter who you are, if you're an insider in the industry, someone who's gone to a museum once on a school field trip, I think there's something for everyone here because we'll lead with some authentic storytelling. It's about the people who do this invisible work, to your point, all this hard work behind the scenes and the why they do it, what they're struggling with, and how they overcome their challenges. So listeners will walk away with like those insider stories that do inspire. And then maybe some insiders in the industry will come away with practical insights from people who are probably struggling with similar things that they are. And just overall, a better understanding for and appreciation of how culture is preserved and shared to the public and cared for.
And also, I can see that you are going to, in fact, bring to light some of the interesting stories of certain exhibits in terms of how they were obtained in the first place and discovered and so on and so forth. Or are you looking to keep those secret and not get into those conversations?
No, that's what Museum Backstage is all about. And insiders, the people who work in the basements behind the scenes, we love talking about what we do. And there's not really a platform to do it in a way that gets a lot of appreciation unless we're going to be presenting at a conference. And even then, you don't get the connection to someone who is asking you questions because I've been there before. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about collections and how they're formed. There's lots of talk right now in the industry about repatriation, giving back some collections to cultures that they were stolen from, in the very beginning of our industry hundreds of years ago when there weren't the ethics that we have now, for instance, but also what goes into making an exhibit and all of the logistics behind that. It's always when you ask someone, tell me about your latest exhibition, they say, oh, let me tell you, because it's a big production, right?
Yeah, yeah. But in fact, you probably have seen it, but there was a movie called Monuments Man. So that is right up your alley, right? That entire movie was about the story of how the museum was created in the first place and the struggles of getting it together and And that's exactly, I mean, you are really going to be having a Monuments Men like episode pretty much regularly, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, we're all monuments men even now, we're all, and especially because we're dealing with repercussions that happened at that time, right? Speaking of repatriation, so in the United States, when we talk about repatriation, that's giving back collections in good faith to the people who created them. We talk about that in terms of Native American tribes, indigenous people, but in Europe, that's spoken about in terms of World War II. Especially, and in other ways as well because of colonialism. But that's a really big part of what we're all doing right now is trying to mend some fences, build some bridges, and be good stewards of collections. And that doesn't always mean that the collections have to be in a museum, right? To live their best.
Yeah. So then, would it be fair to describe your show as a show really all things about managing museums, stories about museums? Anybody who is interested, anybody who's gone to see that movie would be someone to tune in and hear some stories, especially some of the people that you will have from the museums, right? So not just the museum, if you like, professionals, but pretty much anyone in the public would also be interested, right?
Yeah, yeah, anyone would be interested, and I know that because when I describe to people what I do, people who aren't in the industry, friends of mine, friends of my parents, people I meet in line, they always say, "Wait," they lean in like, "Wait, what do you do?" Like monuments men, or they'll, think of their own example, but they get really excited about this.
Yeah. Okay, so this actually connects me to the next question. Tell us a little bit about the kind of guests that you intend to have on the show.
Yeah, so right off the bat, we'll be talking to museum directors, collection managers, conservators, so people who restore things and treat them, artists, business owners in the cultural space, cultural leaders, basically anyone who keeps the cultural world running behind the scenes and in the basements.
So these are really the people that can talk directly from experience, some of the particular kind of events that happen to them, and as well as some best practices. So it's really a resource for other museum professionals to tap into and then learn from each other, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think leaning into the storytelling is a great way to appeal to a little bit of everyone who will get a benefit, whether you're in the know or just really interested from the outside in.
Hmm. So you will have these people come on the show and talk about, obviously, all things about museum, and give us a sense of some of the topics, give us some specifics that you intend to cover.
Sure. We'll cover everything from art and artifact collecting, like I was speaking to earlier, how these collections are built. Especially now, we're trying to be more purposeful about the mission of the institutions and how collections can support that mission, whether it means getting more items from maybe underrepresented artists or getting rid of a few items that you say, oh, maybe this doesn't reflect, what we're trying to do now. So, collecting in general, whether you're a museum or a private collector. And I'll just say this, everyone is a private collector. You don't have to be in Aspen with, the most weird contemporary art that you're buying for an investment. Everyone is a collector. We all collect something. I haven't met anyone who doesn't. So, collections, just in general, as a concept, is one big topic. Preservation, of course, keeping track of these, taking care of them, making sure they last for future generations. But also, we'll talk about data and tech in museums. Our industry is a little bit behind the curve sometimes with data, information science, technology, but there are people at the forefront who are really revolutionizing this. So we want to bring them on. Leadership in the industry as well, and just generally the unique challenges of keeping cultural heritage alive.
And also, of course, every single guest will bring something of their own that will be another interesting way to present. So, people who are tuning in, so you mentioned it's pretty much anybody who is interested in museums, but really the real benefit will go to those who are in the business itself. So, give us some of the benefits that they can take away by tuning in.
Yeah, for insiders in the industry, so collection workers, executive directors of museums, people who are on the board of directors, artists, people who are kind of in the know are going to hear from their peers, essentially, from people who are in the same industry. Maybe they're doing something slightly different than your job in the industry, but they are struggling with the same things that we all are because there are challenges in the industry that are pervasive. And also, everyone has their own unique, special ways of addressing these challenges. And in understanding, especially their journey throughout this field, I think it's really inspirational to hear about. How people have come to do what they do, why they keep doing it when we're, you know, underfunded, don't have budget, have to fight for dollars and cents, apply for grants and compete in that way. It can be hard and it can be a thankless job sometimes. We're not always the best paid industry, right? We're not engineers or doctors, so we all struggle. And hearing from people who are in the same boat and coming up with their own ways to make it better, I think is gonna help everyone.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when I just heard you say this is a thankless job, for those who have been to Colonial Williamsburg, I'm sure that, yeah, have you been yourself?
I haven't been, but I've heard so many people who work there speak at conferences. Yeah, I know all about.
Yeah, I have been there. I mean, it's literally people walking the streets dressed exactly like those days. And my point is, they're not just people who just happen to be working there and actors. They are actually historians, and it's a living museum. That's what it is. It's not just showing collections. So, and they are all smiling and they're doing it passionately. So people in this industry, they're not making millions of dollars. They're doing it out of their love for the work and their passion. So bringing a podcast like this for them to share their experiences, I think it's very valuable. So you mentioned something that is really the next thing that I want to ask you. Why are you doing this? In other words, not the job, but the podcast, because podcast obviously takes time and resources. And here you are, you and I worked already one on one enough, plus my team, and so it does take time to get it off the ground, but going forward, obviously you'll be putting time into this. So why are you doing it?
I wanted a way, first and foremost, to demystify museums, first of all, because the thing that I hear a lot that makes me kind of sad from people who aren't in the industry is that they feel maybe a bit intimidated by museums or, God forbid, art galleries. They say, oh, I could never walk into one. I'm so intimidated. Or they think it's not for them, right? That they'll be bored or that they won't understand it. So I wanted a way to demystify it in general, this industry, and highlight, like to your point earlier, the amazing people in this field, all the invisible labor that goes into creating these things, these exhibitions, and preserving these collections, and to make it feel more approachable for everyone. And I want to mention an anecdote that the idea came in my head one day. I was attending a happy hour for it's called the Colorado Collection Management Group, CMG, where it's museum folks getting together, chatting about what we do over happy hour. And the conversations are always so interesting that one day I thought, man, if only these conversations were recorded, people would actually listen to it. People would be interested. And I mean, really, because I could see other people at the bar who weren't with our group leaning in to be like, what are they talking about? What are they saying? It happens every time. And that's what we're trying to achieve here is that authentic glimpse behind the curtain.
Yeah, I mean, it's noble work, whichever way you look at it. So it does take a lot of dedication and passion to be in it, and also to even go a step further and then create a podcast and bring people in. So it's admirable work. So this is great, Sam. So, okay, I have a pretty good idea about the podcast and what it's about and who you're going to have. And let's now get to know you a little bit. So, tell us about yourself, but what I'm interested in is always not your resume, but your life experiences. And most of our whatever we end up becoming, it's formed right at the beginning when were little kids. So let's start by telling us where you grew up, and then tell us some of the things that you remember as a kid that you liked doing that resembles what you do today.
Sure. Yeah. So I was born and raised here in Colorado, in Denver and around Denver, and went to actually University of Denver undergrad and grad. I thought I left in between to go to Chicago. Thought I wanted to be away, and said no. My home is here. And honestly, I was always kind of a artsy, culture a music kid in particular growing up, and my parents really fostered that. From a pretty young age, I played piano. In fact, I knew how to read music before I knew how to read word like words. So from the beginning, I was kind of creative. And my intro into the art world in particular is because of my dad. He's an artist. He does portraits, like really beautiful work. And also a high school European history teacher. She made sure we got a little art history in every unit. Not quite sure it was part of the curriculum, but she did it anyway because she thought it was important. And I just love that because we would have, she called it tea and crumpets. It was juice and cookies, in high school. We weren't that refined. But we would take some time and look at art on the projector and talk about its relation to history. And it really, growing up with my dad making art and that experience in particular with that teacher really stuck with me.
So your dad was an artist and your mom was art history teacher for European.
My mom is a teacher. She actually was my teacher when I was growing up, but for first and second grade. So my mom is a teacher too. And she always would focus on, well, she likes history, but she would make sure that we, studied and really understood the content pretty well. So she was really into the being studious and being good students. And my dad was more of the creative type and making sure we were exercising some creativity as well.
So who were you closer to, your mom or your dad?
Oh, growing up, my dad, I think we all, there are four of us, because he's a more, playful, approachable, creative type. And my mom, being a teacher, being elementary school teacher, he was the strict one. And especially, she was my teacher for, I think it was first grade. Maybe kindergarten too. So I always had that association with her as the authority. But yeah, I mean, we love them both, obviously.
And you said you were four of you. So you have three other siblings.
Mhm. 3 younger siblings, I'm the oldest.
And boys, girls?
I have my next youngest sister is a couple years, well, 1.5 years younger than me. My brother is 5 years younger than me, and my youngest sister is 12 years younger than me.
Did you all turn out to be people into arts or not?
In some ways, yes. So, we're all super different, which is very cool. My, next youngest sister is really into science in particular, and she went to school for biology, and she's in the kinda medical world now. And my brother, he's really, really into, kind of the figurines, and he like, making games and being creative in that way. And my youngest sister is in college now for animation. So she and I are the most similar in terms of kind of the art school background.
Sounds like it. So your father obviously had influence on you because of your interest in arts. I can see your mother being the teacher, more if you like discipline, and but there is another dimension here that you have, and that is being an entrepreneur because this is your business, right? So, do you have anybody else in the family who's a business person?
The only other person, let me make sure before I answer. Yeah, the only other person who I experienced growing up who had a business is my grandpa, my dad's dad. He was a contractor for a long time, and did his own thing, had his own business. He was still working. I have some memories of him, I think, still working, but for most of my life he was retired. But he'll talk about owning a business, and especially with me, he always asks about my business because we have kind of a unique experience in my family.
Were you close to your grandfather?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm close to all my grandparents.
So, would you say that he had any influence over you, having his own business and everything?
Yeah, I would say so. I think too, a lot of business owners that I got to experience later on were people who I apprenticed with and interned with when I was learning art conservation as a craft and as a profession. I interned at a lot of private, they call them private practices, kind of like medical practices, where they are conservators who work outside of a typical museum space. And so between, understanding from my grandpa that it's possible as a life path, and then realizing from these conservators that not only is it possible, but it's possible in this industry really resonated with me. And when I was there at those companies, I liked learning, about the business, about how you find and maintain your clients, about the money kind of side of things. It is creative in its own way to own a business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, owning a business is very different. You have to be everything. So they say that there is every leader. This is not necessarily exclusive to owning a business, but if you own a business by design, you are a leader. So every leader has six different traits. Every leader has to be creative, an entrepreneur, a producer who gets things done, and every leader has to be a team builder, has to be able to put a team together, and every leader is also a competitor, usually very competitive. And then the last one is every leader is it's called stabilizer. What that means is more strategic negotiations and things like that are part of that trait called stabilizer. So you can't be anything without being creative if you are in business. So clearly, you have a business out of something nobody even thinks of. So what I'm trying to understand is your interest in arts, clearly influenced by your father, and then your courage to start a business. Did you really think about it, or you just jumped right in? Was it natural, or was it how was that?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky that I got to see business ownership in this industry modeled by people that I apprenticed for and worked with and interned with before. So it wasn't unfamiliar to me about how logistically these things would work on paper. But that doesn't mean that it's not scary, that it wasn't scary. Of course, yeah, very, very scary to start because there's always the thought like, "Oh, well, if it works for them, that doesn't mean it's gonna work for me." Maybe some imposter syndrome and just the responsibility, kind of the thought of, "Ooh, I'm not gonna have a salary from someone else, right? I have to make my own salary." And, we have a I have a life, I have a husband, I dogs and a house. So, your mind can kind of spiral into, at least mine can, what if this, what if that? So, it took a lot of courage, to start. But once it was started, I mean, I had all the skills, right? And I say this, that most creative people will probably do very well to start a business. Because the start is the creative part. You have to have all of the other traits that you mentioned to keep it going, but the starting, if you can get past the kind of scary threshold of it, it's really actually kind of fun.
And who supported you the most, and who was against it the most?
That's a good question. I mean, my family, so my parents and my grandpa in particular, were really all for it. They were like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. You can do anything." But they mean it when they say it. Their encouragement, so that I don't take it lightly when they say things like that. Well, I was probably the most against it in my devil's advocate, like, on the one shoulder, "This is what I wanna do," and then the devil's advocate being, "Oh, here's the a million ways it could go wrong." But what I do appreciate about my husband in particular is he is a good devil's advocate. So, he would push, like, "Okay, well, have you considered what you would do if this happened, or do you have a plan?" He's very methodical, and he's an architect, so he's very methodical and structured in a way that I learn a lot from. So I really appreciated that from him in the very beginning ideas of helping me think through some things.
So I'm just wondering in my mind, do you think that your courage was in some way to demonstrate and prove to your grandfather and your father that what you've learned from them and what you've seen growing up is now something that you're taking to the next level, actually making it a business, and of course your grandfather being in business, and it's like bringing the two of them together in you, so to speak. Did you ever have that in your mind at all?
No, I've never considered that, but I think it is right because the business is like a Venn diagram in my mind a little bit, where it kind of brings everything about me and what I've learned and what I believe kind of into the one middle, which is the company. And I would say too, my dad with the art side, my grandpa with the business, but also my mom. She played violin when she was growing up, and she was actually the reason that I got into it after piano. And I played, on her violin for a long time until I had mine. And the music part, I've been reflecting on it a lot because I'm still teaching, I'm still giving lessons, still playing. And recently I've been reflecting on how much that did have an influence. I mean, I've been playing violin for two-thirds of my life. And I think that part too is a little bit underrated in my mind in how that comes together, because all about rehearsing, iterating, collaborating in a group. And it was really my mom who supported me in that endeavor. So I think kind of those three people in particular coming together. That's a good point.
Yeah. So my question to you is, have you ever told them this, that the influence they had on you?
No, no, I haven't. But I'm really excited. Since I hadn't really realized it until just now, I'm excited to share that with them.
Yeah, this is my favorite question. And, one of the answers I get is this. So I tell them, okay, have you ever told them this? And say, oh, well, he knew. I say, that's not my question. Have you ever? So it's always a good idea to tell people because you don't know. I mean, you know how it is. You get up in the morning, off to the races. You've got a bunch of things to do, and then by the time you just sit down, the day is already over, and then another day you go to sleep. And but some of these things that are important that shape our lives, they are important to remember and reflect, and then also share with those who actually give us the drive, right? And so we don't always think about it. So this was great, great to learn about you. And I told you when we first talked, I was good at playing instruments, but never really got started with playing either the piano or the violin. It's something I always think about, but another lifetime maybe.
It's never too late, Nick.
Yeah, of course, we are always learning new things, but maybe one day. So, give us the name of your podcast again and tell us how can people find it, tune into it, and also your contact information. How can people contact you if they need to?
Sure. So the podcast is Museum Backstage. My business is Mountain Museum Management. So you can find both me and my business on LinkedIn. And Mountain Museum Management's website is www.museum-mgmt, like management.com. And you'll find the Museum Backstage podcast page on that website, and you can kind of tune in on any of the platforms you use to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, and also YouTube.
And also YouTube, that's right.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the opportunity to learn about you and your podcast. And I'm looking forward to this is a Monument Man in the making, but a better version.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time today.
It's a pleasure.
Museum Backstage podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.